Selling is a process, it's a science, it's not an art. Understanding that buying process, understanding how you can enable that buying process, taking people through a structured journey, through a structured process is incredibly important. And they see that you are really emotionally invested in helping them solve that problem. That is a home run, right? That is a core belief of mine. At the same time, the best technology doesn't always win. It's about creating awareness, depending on the solution of the product, creating some kind of viral. But at the end of the day, it is still selling. You're selling not with a direct salesperson, but with a product and with a trial process. It's still selling. I am Kris Nagel, CEO of Sift. Sift is a digital trust and safety company. We are focused on helping the enterprise build great consumer experiences and prevent fraud and cybersecurity risk for the enterprise. I have been in the workforce for about 30 years, had the opportunity to work for a number of venture-backed companies, had a couple of early IPOs, went really early stage, kind of pre-revenue for a couple of companies. And so I spent close to 20 years in the field, spending time with customers, selling to customers, supporting customers, and it's just been a fantastic run. I started my career with Apple Computer back in the day. A very different time for Apple. It was a much smaller company. Steve Jobs had just left. John Sculley was CEO. The company was going through a number of trials and tribulations, but I can't think of a better place to start my career. I had the opportunity to do just a great many different things: manufacturing, new products, engineering, product marketing. I figured out pretty quickly, I was in product management for a while, figured out that the real activity, the real lucrative careers were out in the field with customers, selling to customers. And so I moved into a customer-facing role, and that was my first sales role. The idea that every customer I was going to call was going to say no. I thought, boy, this isn't going to be much fun. So getting no all day long is not great for the ego. It's not great for being in a good mood at the end of the day. But learning to accept no as a learning experience was incredibly valuable. Okay, they told me no, and I actually got into a pattern. Okay, why no? Tell me why no. I just need to know, right? Before we end this call, tell me why no. And suddenly people would start to engage. Well, here's why no. I don't have the budget, or this doesn't fit what I'm trying to do. The very first sales manager I had was, I came out, I was a product manager. This is my product. It's awesome, it's great, it's got all these bells and whistles, and we can accomplish all of these things with it, right? His advice of talk less than 30% of the time was some of the best advice that I've ever received in my career. Listen to what they're telling you. They're gonna tell you everything that you need to know. And if you're ever in a conversation, right, especially for a young founder, try not talking, except for 30% of the time. And the investor, the potential customer, the partner, they're gonna tell you what you need to do, right? You just have to be willing to listen. For me, I think the most fundamental thing to realize about selling is you're not trying to sell somebody something, you're trying to help them solve a problem. What it is this person, this team, this organization are trying to accomplish. So what's the business outcome they're trying to reach? And how are they going to make their decision through that process? You're in a great, great position. If you try to help them solve a problem and they see that you are really emotionally invested in helping them solve that problem, that is a home run, right? That is a core belief of mine. Selling is a process, it's a science, it's not an art. Understanding that buying process, understanding how you can enable that buying process, taking people through a structured journey, through a structured process is incredibly important. So having process discipline, finding out what works, finding out what doesn't work. And I think probably a lot in your audience where they're just trying to figure out how to sell that first customer, that second customer. It's very early stage. Trying different things, trying different messages, trying different PowerPoints. The companies that I've been with that are very early revenue or pre-revenue, I would have a half a dozen different PowerPoint decks, a half a dozen different messages early on to see what worked, what resonated, what aligned to their problem, what didn't align to their problem. But having a process, having a cadence, asking customers for a lot of little yeses along a buying process is incredibly important. I think, selling is absolutely a team sport. When I think of selling, it's about managing a team, if you will, that is responsible for bringing the right value proposition to the right people on that evaluation team. And I learned that very, very early, that you couldn't do it on your own. You had to be the de facto leader, even though those various different functions didn't report to me per se, but on a given opportunity, you kind of lead a team through the process and you lead a customer through their buying process. As a salesperson, the person carrying the responsibility for winning new business or renewing business, your job is to understand what the customer needs and then to bring the team players to the discussion to help facilitate that customer's learning process about why you're the best vendor. If a client needs a deep dive on machine learning, good salespeople recognize I'm not the machine learning expert, but I have a system engineer that's very good at that. Or they need an even deeper dive, so I'm going to bring in a data scientist. Obviously, during this entire sales engagement process, from very early on to the end, the customer is looking at the website. They're looking at reference materials available to them. They're doing self-education. They're looking at peer reviews. And so your marketing organization is an extended team member. Sometimes it just takes an executive saying, we are committed to your success or Ms. Customer. I will partner with you to make this successful. That's a lot of the role that I play today, right? If I believe in something and the customer is struggling, I will sit down and make a personal commitment and tell them exactly what I'm going to do to help them be successful. That's another member of the team. You're an orchestrator of a process and of a relationship. If you show up with everybody all at once, it's just annoying and overwhelming to a buyer. But knowing I need to plug in this piece at this point in time, it's a skill. Even as a CEO today, I view my job as building the organization in a way that we're building the right team for the sales team to call upon to be successful in their sales engagements, in their renewal engagements, in the things that they need to do to run their business. I am a big believer in product-led growth. At the same time, the best technology doesn't always win. It's about creating awareness, depending on the solution of the product, creating some kind of viral notion in the market. But at the end of the day, it is still selling. You're selling not with a direct salesperson, but with a product and with a website and with a trial process. It's still selling. It just so happens that there isn't a salesperson in the middle of that process. Instead of, I've got great technology, everybody should buy this stuff, but how do I expose this technology and what business problem am I trying to solve? That's a form of selling. At Ping, we went through a huge transition. We called it high velocity selling for a certain component of the market. And the idea was to allow the customer to do as much self-education as possible. They had to find us when they had a problem. We had to align to the problem that they were having. We had to give them a way to learn without talking to us. And at some point, they may or may not talk to a salesperson. So I think for early entrepreneurs, early stage companies, product-led growth can be incredibly valuable. It really depends on the macroeconomic situation. There's been a real slowdown in product-led growth companies. It will come right back as soon as the economy improves. But think of it as selling. Don't think of it as, I got great technology. The other real dependency here is the nature of the market that you're targeting. No matter how good a product or a technology or a platform might be, enterprises have financial analysts, they have procurement people, they have decision-making processes, they have 14 levels of approvals. It's incredibly difficult to get through that buying process in the enterprise without a seller involved in some form or another. And that sales team is not just your own sales team, it is all of the partners in the ecosystem. There are very well established channel and distribution mechanisms for people to bring products and services to market. There are the large system integration partners that are trying to solve big problems for the enterprise. That is an extension to your selling motion, right? And you have to think about how to build and grow off of that. So I really view it as a continuum. Purely product-led growth, early days, think of it as a sales mechanism and you're selling. The product has to do a big part of that selling, but it's also awareness and website and partnering factors in there. As you move up in the enterprise, then you'll have to have direct selling teams involved. You've got to think about kind of where you are and what you're trying to accomplish at a given point in time. And it changes for the company over time. It's a continuum and you just kind of have to know where you are and what you're trying to accomplish. Looking back now, your 20s and 30s are about a time of exploration, particularly your 20s. Trying to find yourself and who you are as a person, how you want to contribute back to society, and what you want to do professionally. I encourage everyone, right, at that stage of life to explore, to follow your passions, to follow things that are interesting. Compensation and money will come with time. In my case, I knew I wanted to be in technology, but I wasn't sure what I wanted to do in technology, right? So trying different operational kinds of functions in an organization is a great way to explore. Trying different technology types. If I look back over my career, it's been everything from hardware, software, enterprise software, appliance-driven activities, cloud. So there are, different technology evolutions happen over time, but exploring those things as they come up is a fantastic opportunity. I really encourage people, don't put too much pressure on yourself to find the right thing. Until you explore and know what you're truly passionate about, continue the search.